All right. Welcome to the Sandhurst Beyond Sunday podcast. We want to equip the saints to think biblically about God, life, and culture so that our faith goes beyond Sunday. That's what it's about. And so we got a good one today. Head coverings.
Yeah, man. Let's do this. The question of the ages.
The passage in the New Testament that nobody knows is there. And then when you read it, it's like, what did I just read?
Yeah. You're not alone.
We've been keeping up with the World Cup. It just finished. Thoughts?
Oh my goodness. I mean, yeah, brain stuck. It was incredible. It was incredible. The whole thing. I loved it. I think one of my favorite things was, the Lay's commercial where Will Ferrell tells, is yelling out to Beckham, "Hey, do you fancy salt and vinny?" And we're like, "Why are you talking like that? We'll drive on the side of the road." It brought back a lot of memories of living. And I love that. For me, I think the World Cup, I love just the international flair. Everybody, all the nations, the whole world comes around one thing. And in some ways, don't want to get too theological, but I mean, it kind of reminds me of what we'll have one day. All the nations coming on one thing, the glory of Christ. But now we have the glory of football, so we can just enjoy it for what it is and what it's worth. But had just a great time watching the games. I miss it already.
I was wondering what the viewership is of the World Cup final compared to the Super Bowl.
Oh yeah.
And I thought, okay, how comparable is it? And I may get the numbers off a little bit here, but it was somewhere in the ballpark of Super Bowl, 120 million. The World Cup final, over 1 billion.
Oh yeah, easily.
1.5 billion people. That's like 1 out of 7 people on the planet.
Yeah,
were watching that.
Yeah, I was almost
not everyone though.
No, I was almost thinking that was a low estimate because it brings the whole world together. It really does, and it's a brilliant game. Just need a ball, and love our country. Kudos to America. Great job, made us proud. But dude, Spain, they are ridiculous.
Yeah,
I mean,
they kind of made it a little bit of a boring game for us, in that their defense unbreakable.
I mean, just imagine this. Imagine you're on a baseball team, and you got this pitcher who pitches every game. And all you have to do is score 1 run, and you'll win every game. That's it. Because, nobody could score on them even.
Yeah.
So they just look invincible. I can't wait to see where this team goes. I hope they stay together. I hope they keep that's the whole thing about them, is that they don't have one player that kind of takes the limelight. The whole team just works so well together, and I hope they can maintain that.
Yeah. Yep. So we're going to jump into 1 Corinthians 11, but right after this, we're going to walk into staff meeting, and on the third staff meeting of the month, the third Tuesday of the month, we do a Bible class with Adam. All right, so give me the sneak peek. So nobody knows because it's just staff meeting, but Adam does a little Bible class, a little bibliology class for the staff. It's super awesome. We come with our notebooks, we come around the table. And so you want to give me a little sneak peek into what today is going to be?
Yeah, man. So, I mean, the Bible as a book, as a study itself, we can study a passage, but you can also study the book itself. And so we've been studying the history of the Bible, the development of the Bible, and today is going to be really a drill down on the spiritual dynamic of God creating His Word. So, I mean, there's the human authorship and the transmission and the copies and the manuscripts and all that, but there's also the divine element. So we're starting with that. So we're going to focus on divine revelation, inspiration, and divine revelation, inspiration, and then illumination. And then what is illumination, and how is it different from revelation and inspiration? Does it matter? Why does it matter? What about authority? And then we're going to talk about infallibility and inerrancy. So those are, because
all of that today.
We throw in all these topics. Yeah, we're going to do, because that's all related to the divine process of God giving us His Word. So all those parts are going to boom, 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 boom. We'll do it quick.
Okay, give us the 30-second sort of. You listed like 4 or 5 words that are important. Yeah. What's the 30-second explanation for each?
Yeah. So revelation is God's divine disclosure that He reveals Himself to man, and this is important for a lot of reasons. But I think where I'm going to camp out is going to be on inspiration. Because there's a lot of confusion about it. Inspiration is mainly, it comes in 3 ways. It's verbal, it is plenary, and it is organic. Verbal meaning that God gave us His words, And it is plenary in that every part of the scripture is, it's not just the parts that say, thus says the Lord, or the red words of Jesus. It's the whole thing. And then it's organic. Like it uses, people are like, if God wrote the Bible, why then does Peter sound different from Paul in Greek? If it's one author, and the reason is he doesn't, it's not like dictation or some kind of trance-like thing. He's co-authoring, if you will, with the humans. Not there's words for this, but he's cooperating with them. Think about it like, how can there be a perfect divine man born of a woman, right? How can that happen? How can you be both God and human? Well, the written word is like the living word. So the Holy Spirit overshadowed a woman, and then she conceived and brought forth that which was divine. But you know what? Jesus looked like Mary. And so there's a sense in which our scriptures are the same way. God overshadowed an author, and then they brought forth that which was the written word, and it's going to look like Paul or Peter. And so we're just going to kind of drill down on how does God give us his word, and what does that look like in terms of writing the Bible in the original manuscripts.
All right. I like it. I'm excited for it. And that sounds like something that would be fun to do as a podcast at some point later.
Yeah.
All right. Let's do 1 Corinthians 11. As we go through it, I think the things that I want to try to do are, one, we're Bible people, so we're going to start with Bible. We're going to read the Bible. What does it say? And then I just want to talk through, number one, what are some of the key movements or key themes that Paul addresses? How has the church historically interpreted this? And then what are some things that didn't come out in the sermon just because of time that are worth trying to explain and understand? And actually, some of them I think were really helpful to me. And then trying to just press that into real life a little bit more. All right. 1 Corinthians 11. He's moving from personal conscience to corporate worship. And so I'll start in verse 2. I'm going to read all the way through verse 16. Here we go. Now I praise you because you remember me in everything and hold firmly to the traditions, just as I delivered them to you. But I want you to understand that Christ is the head of every man, and the man is the head of a woman, and God is the head of Christ. Every man who has something on his head while praying or prophesying disgraces his head. No hats in church. Mm-hmm. But every woman who has her head uncovered while praying or prophesying disgraces her head. For she is one and the same as the woman whose head is shaved. For if a woman does not cover her head, let her also have her hair cut off. But if it's disgraceful for a woman to have her hair cut off, or her head be shaved, let her cover her head. For a man ought... So that's... Okay, that has a lot to do with... everything to do with what's on your head. And there's a lot of confusion here because what the head covering is actually in dispute. Is it some sort of shawl, kind of veil type thing on the back of the head? Or is it actually just your hair?
Right.
There's actually a fair amount of debate about that. But general consensus is he's actually talking about some sort of head covering.
Yeah.
Verse 7, for a man ought not to have his head covered, since he is the image and glory of God. But the woman is the glory of man. For man does not originate from woman, but woman from man. For indeed, man was not created for the woman's sake, but woman for the man's sake. Therefore, the woman ought to have a symbol of authority on her head. Why? Because of the angels.
Oh, yes.
Yes, that's great. Okay, we'll talk about that. However, in the Lord, neither is woman independent of man, nor is man independent of woman. For as the woman originates from the man, so also the man has his birth through the woman. And all things originate from God. Judge for yourselves. Is it proper for a woman to pray to God with her head uncovered? Does not even nature itself teach you that if a man has long hair, it's a dishonor to him? But if a woman has long hair, it's a glory to her, for her hair is given to her for a covering. But if one is inclined to be contentious, we have no other practice, nor have the churches of God.
Whew! All right.
man.
That just clears it right up.
That just clears it right up.
Yep.
All right, so I usually have a little bit of sort of a kind of flow I want to go through here, but I don't know that I do right now. So let's just kind of start with maybe let's just start with what is confusing or unclear either to you or to commentators in general. I already referenced the nature of the covering. It is unclear, although general consensus is it's related to an actual covering. But that is unclear. Is we're talking about a head covering, like a shawl type, veil type, hat type thing, or are we talking hair? I think the answer is hair. But what are some of the other things to you that is like, this is a difficult passage because
where do we begin? So, I think the painting back the big picture, the main challenge of this passage is that it there's so much that's culturally charged, and Paul has not been afraid to address cultural issues.
Yeah.
And it makes sense that he's addressing a cultural issue and applying the gospel truths to it while, you are free from, but consider that, that you still live in the world, although you're not of it. So there's a lot of cultural issues he's addressing, and they're obviously tied up in there. But then he throws in these, eternal sounding things like the angels and because of creation. And so are we talking about
God?
Yeah, and God. So are we talking about things that really are culturally shaped, or are we talking about something that is more, truth shaped? Yeah, timeless. Exactly. So I mean, that to me, that's the big tension in the text, and it comes out, in head coverings. And I think that's the other is it hair? Or is it something you wear? Because then, if you put them, if it's something you wear, is it something that you only wear after the fall? Because when God put them in the garden, did He give them a little shawl, for heave? Because apparently
That fig shawl.
Yeah, I mean like that. So there's been a lot of ink spilled on this, and I think there's some things that we can kind of figure out, and then some things we're going to have to hold loosely.
Yeah, another sort of difficulty that just talk about where ink gets spilled. It's related to the understanding and definition of the word head.
Yes.
What does head mean?
Kephale.
Because that is what. You just said the Greek word there. The verse 3 says Christ is the head of man. Man is the head of a woman, and God is the head of Christ.
Yeah. There's a lot. The word head repeats in this passage so many times.
Yeah, and it's used literally.
Yep.
Something on your head.
Yep.
And it's used metaphorically.
Yep.
God is the head of Christ.
That's right.
Okay, so it carries these different meanings, and there's really two sort of, you might say, opinions on how to interpret that word. One is source.
Yeah. Kind of like the head of a river, right? The
the
source.
Head, yes.
Yeah.
And the other is authority.
Yeah.
And the consensus is in the direction of authority, because even if it does mean source still even implies authority. So you just said the head of a river. Right. It is the thing from which it comes, and it carries then with it.
That's right.
Authority.
That's right.
So that's another difficulty. Last difficulty to mention, and then we'll try to clear things up in a way that I think is actually really helpful, and to a point where I actually began to think, man, this is actually good.
Yeah.
The difficulty of the emotional sort of aspect. No matter who you are, you have reason to read this and go and get a little bit offended, or feel like what?
Yeah.
Whether you're a guy with long hair or a guy who wears his hat in church, or whether you're a woman or a woman with short hair, or a woman who's never worn a head covering in church as a symbol of anything.
Yeah.
You can read this and just go and have reason to be offended. But then there's the emotional side, and then you pair that against what has been taught about this passage throughout church history up until the middle of the 20th century, and that is this: that 1 Corinthians 11. If you look at what church fathers have said throughout, up to the 20th century. This was actually not a controversial passage. You read what the guys that you typically are quoting, and they're like, yeah, this is head coverings.
Yep.
Do it. And it wasn't until the 1950s ish that the shift began to happen, where 1 Corinthians 11 began to feel controversial, and then began to drift away from what is just the plain reading of the text in terms of head coverings. And so then the question is, well, what happened in the 50s and 60s that would have led to such a dramatic change in the church's teaching on this? And the answer is the sexual revolution, feminism. And so then you go, okay, well, what's the connection there? And you have this cultural change and then you have church leadership that is going, maybe we need to find a way to make the Bible more palatable. And so here, kind of my journey through this passage was this. I started with my conclusion, and my conclusion was I've never been in a church where women wore head coverings. I've never been in a church where it was like, by the leadership, looked down upon for a man to wear a hat in church. I've never been in a church like that. So I started with the conclusion that this has to be culturally relative, not binding. That's where I started. And then a little bit into my study, I thought, well, it just kind of dawned on me that is literally the worst way to study anything, with your conclusion already formed.
Right.
And then, so I was like, I need to go back to this. And so started, I needed to study this with more humility, more objectivity. And that's when I started reading more of what the early guys said. And even so, there's actually some more modern push back to it, and started to listen to them, and I had to ask myself this question. If I was convinced in my mind biblically that for the last 90 years or so, 80 years, the church has been missing the mark and we should be wearing head coverings in church, would I have the guts to say to the elders, guys, I think we've missed it and I think we need to go in this direction? Like, would I have the guts to actually be here when it's unpopular or not culturally acceptable? And so that was kind of my journey to go, do I actually have the guts to do that?
I was thinking, do I have the guts to tell my wife she has to wear a head covering to church? And that would be I think that question has two layers, and I'm kind of interested to see where you go with how this before I tell you where I am.
Okay. So to keep going with my journey through it?
Keep going.
All right. Well, so my journey through it was to go, all right, there's a lot of different issues that people appeal to culture as a way of wiggling out of the Bible's clear teaching.
Yes, that.
And I gave an example of that on Sunday. That's, but you can take any example. I gave the example of homosexuality. That in the Greco-Roman world, it was like this. It's not like this anymore, and so things aren't the way they used to be. So we're good now. And so I had to go back to, okay. How do we interpret the Bible? And one of the most basic Bible interpretation principles is you let the Bible interpret the Bible. When there's something you read in the Bible that makes you scratch your head and go, I'm not sure what to do about that, I don't go with, okay, what is easiest to explain away or what is most culturally acceptable. I need to go, okay, what does the Bible have to say about this? And this is where I started to get some traction. Amazing. Like the normal Bible study principles. Yeah. And the Bible has very little to say about head covering. So let me get to my conclusion, and then I know you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, it's fine.
So what does the rest of the Bible have to say about head coverings? And the answer is really nothing. So what else is important and core to the passage that helps me understand the passage? And I really started to get traction when I saw that this passage is bookended by two two different words that have very similar meanings. In verse 2, now I praise you because you remember me in everything and hold firmly to the...
Teachings.
Yeah, yours says teachings?
Yeah.
Okay.
Traditions.
Mine says traditions, and that's important because the Greek word that is used there, that word for traditions, is a word that Jesus uses in a couple different times, but in Mark 7 in particular. I'll come back to that in a second. And then in verse 16, he says, but if one is inclined to be contentious, we have no other practice.
Right.
That word is custom. So we have these two words that
Yes.
bookend the passage, tradition and custom. When you look at the word tradition, and sorry that this is review from the sermon, but this was just really, really, really helpful for me. When you look at that word tradition, I forget what the Greek word there is. I don't know if you're going to look it up.
Yeah, I got it right here. Sorry, I scrolled down to see what
Okay,
practice is. But the tradition is paradosis.
Okay, so that word comes up a couple different times in Jesus' ministry, and usually he's using it, not all the time, but in Mark 7 in particular, in a couple different instances similar to it, Jesus is being confronted by the Pharisees because he's not keeping their traditions.
The tradition of the
now,
elders.
the tradition of the elders.
Yeah.
This was not Old Testament command. This was
Right.
basically Old Testament interpretation.
That's right.
And he's like, hey, you're not keeping our traditions. And specifically in regard to washing their hands before the eating of these meals.
That's right.
And bro, you're not keeping our traditions. And he's like, you are experts. He literally says, you are experts at setting aside the commandment of God for the sake of your traditions. So
Same word.
Yes, yeah, that's the same word as verse 2 in chapter 11.
Yep.
So Jesus is quite happy
Yeah.
to throw out the tradition for the sake of the truth that stands behind it. The truth behind the tradition of the washing was the significance of holiness. Okay.
Yep.
But to the extent that that tradition is actually distracting from the truth, it's not like upholding holiness. It's incentivizing like self-righteousness and judgment. Jesus is like, all right, we're going to get rid of the tradition because we care about the truth.
That's right.
Man, that was like really, really, really helpful. And so it's and then that word custom, similar. Pilate uses that word in regard to Barabbas. It was a custom. It wasn't an Old Testament like binding command. It was a custom. And so I got to a point where I was like, okay, I'm not just trying to. I am not doing sort of the hermeneutical gymnastics to try to wiggle my way out of a passage that I just don't like. I'm actually like applying the core maybe not common sense, but just like the core basic principles of Bible interpretation. You let the Bible interpret the Bible. The Bible doesn't say a lot about head coverings. It does say some important things about traditions. We have freedom and I would say responsibility to be flexible with the tradition and actually to get rid of the tradition when it distracts from the truth that's behind it.
That's right.
All right, that was a lot of words. What you got?
That's good. Yeah, and I think that helps because that is also consistent with everything we've been saying about like the passage is really not about meat sacrifice to idols,
Yep.
and it's about deeper things, and so ultimately it's love and the glory of God, and so I think he's continuing that, saying, okay, that we have traditions and the traditions communicate things, but the main thing about them is the truth behind them, like you said, and the foundation. And so Jesus was happy. I mean, he literally made a very clear distinction between traditions of men and the commands of God. Mm-hmm. And so that really is that. So we're not just saying, oh, here we read something that we don't like, and so let's just toss it out because it's probably culturally ensconced and we've moved beyond that. No, Paul specifically bookends this passage talking about traditions, practices, and then he does bring in some eternal elements and some foundation, but he clearly what he's talking about is something that that was communicating a tradition that was communicating something in their day that it no longer does in our day.
Yep. Yeah. And so here's kind of the three points I would want to draw out of this text to help kind of frame a right understanding of it. Number one, head coverings were an issue of, number one, witness, and then head coverings were an issue of, number two, tradition. We just talked about that. And then head coverings were an issue of headship, and that would be the third one. So witness, tradition, and headship. In regard to witness, here's where I come to that. When you go back to the culture and you go, okay, what did head covering say in the culture? For a man to wear to cover his head was usually what he would do in one context, and that was temple sacrifice. Okay, so and then for a woman to have the shawl on her head was very customary for women across the Greco-Roman world. I mean, truly, in all my reading and looking at all the things, you look at any statue of a woman in that time period, and she's got a shawl on. Mm-hmm. So this is what the head covering said. For a man to wear it, it said, I'm engaging in temple worship. For a woman to remove it was a sign of, to have it was a sign of modesty and submission to her husband. That's what it meant. So then to remove it was to say, I'm available. That's actually one of the ways you would know the 1,000 temple prostitutes is no head covering. Yeah. She's available. So if you were to go to a church where he says, guys, don't cover your heads, and women do cover your heads. To go to a church, corporate worship, where the men have their heads covered and the women have the head coverings removed, you literally walk in, and the cultural explanation, the only assumption that you have is, I'm in the presence of pagan worshiping prostitutes.
Right.
Like that. And he's going, it's not who you are, but you are saying something about yourself that isn't true. Stop it.
Yeah.
And so that's why I say it's an issue of witness. And then couple that with, I can't remember if I said this on Sunday. Honestly, I hope I did. But this is an important transition text from personal conscience to now corporate worship. And he's coming out of all this conscience stuff going, hey, there's certain freedoms that you have that you ought to be willing to give up for the sake of the gospel. He gives his example in chapter 9, the freedom, the right to be able to receive financially from them as an apostle, but then he gives up that right for the sake of the gospel. And now I think he's going in chapter 11, hey, technically, theologically, you have the right. You can ditch the head coverings, okay? However, you are saying something about yourself that isn't actually true. And this is something that while you could be free to get rid of the head coverings, you should not for the sake of the gospel, because when someone were to come to your corporate worship, they would assume pagan worshiping prostitutes. That's not who you are. And let's function in our church service in a way that is consistent with who we are and what we believe.
I think, again, yes, you're free, but set that aside for what's going to be loving, what you're going to communicate, because it does communicate. I mean, imagine going into it, if I'm going to give you one guess as to what kind of car I drive. Clothing communicates.
If you're listening, he has a Jeep shirt on.
Yeah. You can go to YouTube and see us. But yeah, it communicates. And so he's saying, just be careful what you're communicating, because even though you're free, don't abuse your freedom. And I mean, we all live by this. So I like that it's anchored in this, what feels like a bizarre passage has a very actually natural, lesson to it as you get into it, and just be cautious with that.
So the practical, the sort of life question for me that came out of that was really helpful. In what ways do I engage to keep it personal, in what ways do I engage in the corporate worship setting where I'm saying something with my actions that isn't actually true about what I believe? Okay, to not wear a head covering was saying something with their actions that they're available, that it wasn't actually true. In what ways do I attend a church service and say something with my actions that are in contradiction to what I actually believe? And I reference things like saying with the way I worship that this doesn't matter to me, when it actually does matter to me. There's a long list of things that I could go through that would go, man, I don't want to be a walking contradiction where if you were to put a video camera on me, you would make assumptions about what I care about, what I value, what I believe, and then for that to be different than what I actually believe and what I actually care about.
Imagine being at a wedding or at a party, and the bride and the groom just don't look like they want to be there.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be a walking contradiction. And so, yeah, it's absolutely we need to be aware of that our body matters, our presence matters, and decorum matters. And so, I think it's a good reminder from Paul to be aware of what we're communicating with our demeanor, with our dress, and our words, our relationships. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think we're going to get to decorum in a few minutes, but just to kind of review, we've said headships were an issue of witness. To ditch them was to say something about themselves that wasn't actually true. They were an issue of tradition. We already talked about that. And then an issue of headship. So this is where I want to dig in a little bit in terms of headship. Head coverings were an issue of headship. What do we mean there? And let's dig into some of the things that he says. This is where I think he'll talk about the angels. He'll talk about nature, and I want to dig into those things. So if it's about tradition, if the head coverings are an issue of tradition, and traditions are practices that are meant to uphold truth over time, then we go, okay, what was the truth behind the head covering? What was the truth behind what was the timeless reality behind the time-bound symbol of the head covering?
Yeah.
And it's in verse 3, and it is this. That I want you to understand that Christ is the head of every man, and the man is the head of a woman, and God is the head of Christ. So what's the truth behind the head covering? That is, we can be flexible with the tradition, but not flexible here. Here it is. That God has created a structure of authority, and in the context that he's talking is in the church. Now, it's also, when we read the New Testament, it's also true in the home as well. But there's an authoritative structure. God, Christ, man, woman.
Institutions created by God, and two of them really, there's the family unit, and then there's the church family, both of which mirror our relationship to God. And so it makes sense that he would apply this principle of headship to the home and the church, where there is headship involved. And obviously, and you touched on it on Sunday, that it's a headship in terms of role. But there's, I don't think Christ felt like he was lesser than the Father. That there's a unity and an equality among the members of the Trinity, and just like there is in a family, and yet nonetheless there is an order that God has created that headship reflects.
Yeah, and I think that's actually why Paul is always, when he's writing, he's anticipating the objection, and he tries to get ahead of the objection. So I think that's why he follows it up when he says Christ is the head of man, man is the head of a woman. The objection that you can come up with, this is an authoritative structure it's not just a structure of roles, but a structure of value, because Christ has value over humanity. Right. But then he goes, and God is the head of Christ. It's like he's anticipating the objection. Oh, so you're saying that men are better than women, just like Christ is better than humans. And he's like, and anticipating that, he puts God back into the Father back into the equation. Mm-hmm. And this is where a theology of the Trinity helps so much, that Jesus was equal to God. He is equal to God. Mm-hmm. We gave examples of that on Sunday. And yet distinct from the Father. He had his own distinct role, and that role, in one word, was submission. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what he says. And so what he's making a case for in terms of the authoritative structure is that it is a distinction in roles, not a distinction in value. And actually then, because he ties the authoritative structure back to the Godhead, it affirms equality of equal in value, distinct.
Which, by the way, is interesting, because a lot of moderns will read this and they'll get scandalized by how barbarian it seems, but the opposite would have been true to the original readers. They would have thought it's scandalized in its liberality. How can you say that man is the head of woman in the same way that God is the head of Christ?
Right.
there's no way that women get that much status. There's no way that you could elevate women to that equal role with men, or equal status with men, equal before God. They're in their design, in their nature, in their being, and so that would have been completely scandalous to the original hearers that they would have the same status with a man that Christ does with the Father.
Yes.
Incredible.
Yeah. So tying the authoritative structure back to God affirms the equality.
Yes.
Between men and women, and in value.
Yes.
With distinction in role.
Yep.
All right, so that's him tying it back to God. That's all stuff that we talked about on Sunday. So let's dip into some things that we didn't talk about on Sunday, that may help us out, or maybe they won't help us out. Maybe they'll just give us more context. Okay, let's go to verse 8. We're going to talk about because of the angels. Okay, for man does not originate from woman, but woman from man. For indeed, man was not created for the woman's sake, but woman for the man's sake. Therefore, the woman ought to have a symbol of authority on her head because of the angels.
Yeah. Adam,
what you got?
Okay. This is where I do love the duality of this. So the whole thing about the angels, and there is something I want to say, I guess, about later in the passage about the duality of man and woman, but I'll wait till we get there. The angels, if you're sitting there thinking, well, this means we definitely have to do head coverings because, the angels. It's just, again, in scripture with scripture, Jesus gave us 2 sacraments, right? He gave us baptism and the Lord's Supper. And these are both the same images of the gospel. And by saying Jesus gave it to us, I mean, he was baptized and then said, do this in remembrance of me, in terms of the Lord's Supper. And I mean, imagine saying, well, I know we think that really we have these 2 sacraments of baptism and Lord's Supper, but really we have baptism and Lord's Supper and head coverings. Like, it makes just no sense at all to kind of throw that in as a third physical thing that we have to practice globally forever until God comes. Like, there's it runs completely counter to me, to the gospel, to try to enforce like this dress code in worship. And so the angels is, I think, well, if it's not bringing in some eternal truth to support actual wearing of head veils, what does it mean to bring in the angels to this then? So there's a couple of thoughts on that. One is that it could be simply that they are observers in the worship, and we are, in some ways, we are participating with angels. The angels are in heaven worshiping now. Holy, holy, holy. Isaiah has this vision of the throne room and the angels worshiping there. Revelation also, you see these creatures worshiping in the throne room, and they are there now. And so when we're in worship, we are in a sense joining with the angels. And there were some ancient Jewish traditions that angels were present among worshipers in a way that was unique to the event that they weren't in other ways. And so that could be something he's referring to.
And yeah, so that's one idea. And I don't want to put more in this than is right. However, if you just go, well, what if maybe that is true, and what Paul is saying, that angels that are present in heaven, like worshiping God, but they are also like real beings on earth that are actually like in our worship services. We just don't see them. That kind of raises the stake. Like I think about who was it, Elisha, when he's with he has a servant and they're surrounded by this army.
Yep.
And Elisha's like just chill. And the servant's like, what the world like that? And he's like, hey, we are more than they are. And the servant's like, huh? And Elisha's like, Lord, open his eyes that he can see. And then the servant is able to see that which he could not see before. And that was the presence of these heavenly beings on earth. And that gave Elisha, it was Elisha, right? Not Elijah.
Yes.
Yeah, it was Elisha. he goes that impacted his earthly experience, what he could see that other people couldn't see. So if I just try to imagine, I don't want to put more into this than
Yeah.
what is
Yeah.
a right or good, because it is fairly obscure. But what if God could open my eyes to see that kind of angelic, heavenly, spiritual presence in the room? How much more does the gathering of the saints and worship for God get elevated in my heart that just kind of purges me of any sort of ho-hum kind of ritualistic participation in the service? Like that is, there's something about like when we sing songs, my wife gives me a hard time about this. If we sing a song that is anything about us joining with angels songs, there's something about that that just kind of fires me up, because one day, while this is, we're in a little bit of guess land right here, guessing what he may be saying. We certainly will one day be with angels singing and serving the Lord, and we will see him as he is. But man, if that could be a little bit of a window into how things actually are now,
Yeah.
dude, that's
And, I mean,
good.
And to in our defense, we're not just making this up. I mean, obviously he says this, and that was a tradition among the ancients that angels participated with them in worship. But it is actually preserved in the prayer book of the Anglican Church, which has come down to the Episcopal Church to this day. Every single service, the priest recites these words, this prayer before the communion. Right after, we always say the Sursum Corda, which is lifting up your hearts, the Lord be with you, and also with you, lift up your hearts, lift them up to the Lord. Let us give thanks to the Lord our God. It is right and good to do so. And then here it says, literally, he prays his very next prayers. It is very meet, right, in our duty that we should at all times and in all places give thanks to thee, O Lord, holy, almighty, and everlasting God. Therefore, with angels and archangels and with all the company of heaven, we praise and magnify your glorious name, ever praising and saying, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. Glory to you, O Lord Most High. And so, like every single worship service in the Anglican and Episcopal Church, those words are repeated, that we join our voices with the angels and archangels and the whole host of heaven. And the idea is that in the Christian cosmology, there's three realms. There's four, I guess. There's the human, but there's the human realm, sort of the angelic, demonic, and then the divine realm or heaven. And if you sort of roll hell or Hades into that, also it's sort of the opposite, the foil side of heaven. So, but I think of it that the ancients would have thought of the world in three tiers: the human, the angelic, and the divine. And he's just saying, we are joining our voices, as you said, in worship with the angelic realm of the divine God that we serve and love. And I do feel like that gives us. We're not disenchanted. We're not completely cut off from those who praise him. We are a part of their praise, even though we don't see or hear it now. One day we will, and just be vigilant to the fact that the angels worship him perfectly. And so let's be thoughtful in the way that we worship, so that we don't dishonor those who do it well.
So that's thought one related to because of the angels.
Yeah.
I think that is a cool thought, but I think that's also the thought that we are less inclined to, at least that's the thought that I'm less inclined to think that's what Paul had in mind. Mm-hmm. So what's the second thought?
There's like
or
maybe second, third, fourth, and fifth. Yeah.
there's two primary ones that
Yeah.
I continued to read about.
Yeah.
And actually the second one, I thought you made the most compelling case that I had heard. Because of the angels was a reference to the fact that if you take the authoritative structure, God, Christ, man, a woman, that angels are part of an authoritative structure too. That angels are these creatures that live in willful, joyful submission to the Lord, and they participate in that authoritative structure as well. But you said it better than I did. And do you remember?
Yeah.
I said it was a couple weeks ago now.
Yeah, no, it's and exactly. So as a part of this cosmic realm, right? The angels are perfectly submitted to God, and they delight in it. They embody that submission and honor, because it ultimately comes down to honor. that humans are made in God's image, but angels are also created by God. And as his perfect creatures, they honor their creator. And they are delighted and happy to do this. And so I think Paul's saying if angels are delighted to honor their God, let us also honor our God and be mindful of the angels and to respect the created order that he's given us. I think you did it. I think that's how I would have said it.
All right, yeah. So if head coverings are an issue of witness, we talked about that. Head coverings are an issue of tradition, we talked about that. Head coverings are an issue of headship. Then angels are part of this headship process too, where they submit to their head, God, as well, and there's delight in it, and that does not make them lesser. They're lesser than God, but they're not lesser in their joy because of their submission.
That's right,
and because of their distinction.
Yeah, and they don't feel dismissed, or they perfectly embody their role in creation and their role in relationship to God, their head.
Yeah. All right. So in terms of because of the angels, do you have any other thoughts or any sort of leaning you have in regard to what you think Paul was saying?
The only other possibility, and it, the word angel, and I only introduced this just to kind of make a case for to remind us that there really is no word for angel in the Greek, right? It means messenger. The word angel exists, but it literally means messenger. So imagine if there were no angel, the word English. The only English word that we applied it to was literally messenger. So we have these heavenly messengers, and the word angel in the New Testament is used of humans also, messengers. And so it's possible. And so I just want to remind us that it is a possibility that he says, and because of the angels, he might mean because of those who will be impacted by your witness, the messengers of the people that will go out from our church, make sure that they carry a consistent gospel.
If you're going to invite your one to church, make sure that you don't invite them to a church where you look like a bunch of pagan prostitutes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so to be vigilant to the message that you're sending, essentially, that you as the messenger are living in accordance with the divine order. So that is a possibility. And again, I just mention it because it would also be consistent with the message of Corinthians.
Yep. All right. So that's because of the angels.
Yep.
Let's look at a second sort of thing he grounds the authoritative structure in, and it's authoritative structure / decorum. Mm-hmm. And that's not just the angels, but nature.
Yep.
All right. I'm going to take a stab at this one, and then tell me what you think. Right after where we just stopped, verse 13, judge for yourselves, is it proper for a woman to pray to God with her head uncovered? Does not even nature, okay, so we're grounding the argument here, this authoritative structure, in nature now. Does not even nature itself teach you that if a man has long hair, it's a dishonor to him, but if a woman has long hair, it's a glory to her? Okay, does nature teach us that men have shorter hair, that males have shorter hair? Answer, no. Like, if you look at nature, look at a lion, okay? Certainly Peter knew lions, where he wrote about lions, okay? Does nature teach us that males have shorter hair? Judge for yourselves, is it proper for a woman to pray for her head uncovered? Does not even nature itself teach you that if a man has long hair, it's a dishonor to him? Like, nature does not teach that men have long hair to their dishonor. If you let nature run its course, men have just as long hair as women, plus some on our face.
That's right.
So what is he talking about? Nature. Well, again, we let the Bible interpret the Bible, and he talks about nature in Romans 1 when he's talking about God handing people over to the desires of the flesh as they've exchanged the truth of God for a lie, and that men exchange their natural desire for things that are unnatural. It's the same word that he uses here as he uses there in Romans 1. It is what is natural to us. And so what does nature teach us? Nature teaches, I think this is the most simple and true, way to understand it. What does nature teach us? Nature teaches us that things look like what they are. Nature teaches us that things look like what they are. If you see a lion and it has a mane, guess what? It's a male.
lion. Yeah.
If you see a deer and it has antlers, guess what?
It's a buck.
It's a buck.
Yeah.
If you see a duck and it's all colorful, guess what? I don't know what you call a male duck. I'm not a duck guy, but it's a male duck.
Yeah.
If you see a turkey and it goes, it's a gobbler.
Yeah.
Nature teaches us that things look like what they are. And so this was really helpful to me because then you make the cultural connection there that in certain cultures, if you were going to apply that, things look like what they are. In their culture, again, you go back to the statues and the artwork, you see in Greco-Roman world, for men had short hair. That was what men, in fact, the depictions of men with long hair are, some of them, and we actually watched a video about this together. I think you were there.
Yeah,
you were there. The depictions of men with long hair were of the conquered peoples. That seems that some people guess is the Romans' way of saying, "Hey, you know why we beat you? Because your soldiers were a bunch of girly boys."
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
So nature teaches us that things look like what they are, and the way that gets represented is different in cultures. So, what I think he's saying here, nature teaches us things look like what they are. So you need to pay attention. You need to be in line with what does your culture say, like about how men look. If I go up on a Sunday and teach with a skirt on, somebody would say, no, we don't do that because we want to look like, nature teaches us things look like what they are. You look like a girl right now, okay? But if you wear that same thing and make it plaid and do it in Scotland, guess what?
Yeah, you're a manly man.
You're a manly man.
Yeah.
You know, because here, things look one way here, things look another, but it's consistent with the principle of nature. Things look like what they are, and that's going to be different depending on culture. Right. So, and you could apply that to a bunch of different cultural elements, things, but that was really helpful. Nature teaches us things look like what they are, and so it is, I think, a hindrance to the gospel message when our culture understands, has certain expectations of if you are this, you look like this, and then to intentionally go against them for a man to wear a dress, for a man to paint his fingernails, is a contradiction to that, and it's confusing, and it's a hindrance to the gospel. Take the opposite for girls in our culture. You know, we used to use the word tomboy. I don't know. Did you guys grow up with the word tomboy? Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was culturally acceptable for a girl to dress like a boy, and that was called a tomboy. But that wasn't looking like she wasn't. That's just kind of the way things are in our culture. The point is things look like what they are, and there ought not be a contradiction in the church's setting between what the cultural expectation of if you are this, then you look like this, because that causes hindrance to the gospel and causes confusion to the message.
You know, he really ties these men and women together. He's showing both the diversity, but also the unity. And that's what I love. He doesn't give up. He doesn't jump in one ditch or the other, that, look, men and women are totally different, nor men and women are all the same. You know, he understands that there are things that unite us, and there are things that not divide us, but distinguish us. So in verse 11, he says, "In the Lord, woman is not independent of man, nor is man independent of woman." So they are tied, they are together. For as woman came from man, so also man is born of woman. But everything comes from God. So I love it that he's reestablishing the unity of the equality of man and woman. And one, forget who the theologian was, if it was, I think I tracked it through Beth Moore, maybe Rick Warren, back to Tozer, who said, you know, the pride of the man is that woman was made for him, but the humility of the man is that he needs her, right? He needed a helper. And the pride of the woman is that the man needs him, but the humility of the woman is that she was made for him. Like, there's a duality to this.
I didn't read that.
Yeah.
That was
And so,
That's good.
yeah, it is. I mean, and it's a pretty profound thought that and what it does
Will
is,
you just say it again?
yeah, sure. So the pride of the man is that the woman was made for him, but the humility of man is that he needs her, and the humility of the woman is that she was made for the man, but the pride of the woman is that he needs her, and so that they both bring their a strength, if you will, and a vulnerability that is completed by the other. That the man brings a strength and the woman brings a strength, her help, and then they both bring a vulnerability that the other's strength completes. And that is God's good design. And that is affirmed by Paul. And so Paul is saying here that neither one is better than the other. They're both vital and they're both created equal by God. But there is also, alongside their equality in creation, there is a distinguishing in their roles so that that duality is preserved not only side by side as husband and wife, but vertically as a part of the cosmic order. And this duality will reflect the order from God the Father to Christ, and from Christ to the man, and from the man to the woman.
I hate to keep making you repeat yourself, but can you say that again?
Yeah. So there is a complete equality of a male and female side by side as both made in God's image, and they complete one another in a horizontal, in a worldly sense, side by side. But there's also a vertical way in which they retain a distinction in role between, and they reflect the divine hierarchy or the divine order of God over Christ, and Christ over the man, and the man over the woman. And so there's a complete equality on the ground, right to left, and there is also a complete order and distinction, as it were, north to south, vertically with God, to reflect God's divine design. And it is beautiful, it is powerful, and and God says, when you operate on the ground in a way that is perfect, you reflect the Trinity. And we have complete equality side by side, but we also have a divine order of authority. And I will give that gift. I'll give that gift of that divine order to you to demonstrate my glory on the ground to creation, because that's what I made you for, was to rule creation. And by rule, I mean to reflect my authority and power to all of my creatures, whether they are seen or unseen.
I'm trying to think how to summarize in my own words what you just said. I'm not sure I can get there, but that was still really good.
Yeah, no, and that's what I think. When he grounds the parts that are eternal in the creation, and this sort of these dualities that complete each other, whether you go back to Genesis 1, it's earth and sky, it's land and sea, it's night and day, and it's male and it's female, right? These dualities that complete one another, and he grounds his teaching on worship in God's created order, and so. And that's the appeal then to nature. He's saying, look, you're going to express this order in different places in different ways. Like you said, in modern America, a skirt means one thing, but in Scotland, it means something else. And so as you reflect this order, just be mindful that whatever you're doing on the outside, what you wear and how you conduct yourself, that it reflects what's happening on the inside to the people around you.
I got it. That's good. Beautiful. So that's so we talked about because of the angels, talked about because of nature. I want to probably need to wrap up here in a second. I want to just think, okay, what are some things that we missed? And maybe two things come to mind. Number one, on Sunday, I limited the scope of this to corporate worship because that's the context of chapter 11. He's talking about corporate worship.
Right.
This God-given authoritative structure in the church, and then we also see in the New Testament in the home. It's important that the authoritative structure, which affirms equality and distinction and interdependence, which we talked about on Sunday, gets understood to be in those spheres, the church and the home, but not beyond those, and to help us understand, like, what does this not mean? And so let's just fire out a few things. What this doesn't mean. This doesn't mean that men exercise authority over women in all spheres of life. It doesn't mean that women can't or shouldn't be CEOs or presidents or have authority. He's limiting the application of this authoritative structure to the church and in the home. And when it gets applied in the church, it's that there's really one role that is distinctly for the man, and that is elder. We talked about that. But in terms of like, what does it not mean? What things come to your mind? It doesn't mean that women are less capable. That is certainly not the case at all. In the same way that Jesus is not less capable than God. Again, it helps so much to go back to the nature of God here. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean they can't or shouldn't be in leadership positions. What other things come to your mind? We're like, oh, okay, we need to make sure we understand. This does not mean...
When I think about what it doesn't mean, to combine kind of your family and elder example, I think it doesn't mean that even in the church that every man has authority over every woman.
Okay, correct.
And it really, while he talks about men and women, what he really means is while men and women have these characteristics, it is played out practically in a marriage. And so, and the fact that men are elders, well, they have authority over women, yes, but that is a symbol. The elders in that role are symbolizing Christ, the bridegroom, the husband, and the church is symbolizing the female or the bride. And so they are reflecting the family of a single family in that sense, of a husband and a bride. And so, I have authority in my home, but I don't have authority over someone else's wife or a single woman. That while there are characteristics to malehood and femininity that are real and matter, it is played out in the church with elders in a church resembling a husband and a wife.
So true. Any other thoughts as to? I'm trying to anticipate because I didn't see. I know some people said they sent questions in, but I never actually saw what the questions are. So sorry about that.
Yeah.
I don't know where those questions got put.
I think my final thought was, don't let this be the hill to die on, because there are so many obscure elements. The things that are not obscure are consistent with the rest of New Testament teaching. That God has given us a created order. It is good, and we do our best to live within it, to reflect it to each other, to the culture around us, as a part of our witness, as a part of our being, as a part of our honoring God's design. And at the end of the day, it's there are a few details that you can debate, but at the end of the day, he affirms the equality of men and women. He affirms the headship of Christ and the headship of God over Christ. All the basic truths of the gospel are still here. And I don't know if you were gonna read it, but I thought you articulated that very well at the end of this service.
I was actually gonna finish it with that.
Yeah. I thought that was beautiful to say, look, whatever you take this. Like this is what we know, and this is where we can stand.
Yeah, and so one thing I would add to what you said, because you affirmed equality, you affirmed headship of Christ. I think what I found to be really sweet and good and necessary, relevant about this passage is while it affirms equality, it also affirms distinction.
Yes.
A practical distinction that right now our culture is trying to erase, and we erase the distinction only to the extent that we erase the distinction, we blur the image of God.
Yes.
And this really helped me see that. So equality, yes. Distinction, yes. And interdependence.
Yes.
I mean, and I'm not just injecting that word. He uses the word independent twice.
Yes.
However, in the Lord, neither is woman independent of man, nor is man independent. In other words, we're not independent. We are interdependent.
Yeah.
And we need each other.
Yeah.
In the way that God has created us equal under him, yet distinct to be able to fully express the image of God. So I do want to end with trying to press out some of the nuance of that distinction. We did that in your equipping class a few weeks ago, and that was really good. But as my dad really kind of drilled into us these 4 qualities of a man. I think it was from the book Raising a Modern Day Knight, and it was, man rejects passivity, accepts responsibility, leads courageously, anticipates the greater reward. That was drilled into me. Some other, I've been reading, there's a organization maybe called Warrior Poet Society or something like that, and they kind of have these 4 qualities of a man: to provide, protect, lover, leader. Provider, protector, lover, leader. Provider, protector. And maybe it's just because I haven't read the right books, but I haven't yet. I've been wanting to find something that's like, man, what are the things that I can really capture for womanhood? And that matters to me a lot. One, it matters to me as a pastor. 2, it matters to me because I got 4 daughters. And so I've been just trying to, like, okay, what does the Bible say? And a few things that stand out to me that were reflected in what I read. Again, I just didn't have time to talk, to kind of ground it in the scripture. The one we've already referenced, that Eve was made as a helper for Adam. That word helper is used of Eve in Genesis 1 and 2. And then the rest of the time, that word helper is in reference to who?
God.
God.
About 30 times.
Yeah. Eve is a helper to Adam, like God is a helper. This is not made, like M-A-I-D.
Right.
It's not her being a maid. This is her being to him a help, like a God-given, God-sourced help. That is a beautiful thing.
Yep.
Okay. So woman, she's a helper. What else is the woman? The woman is, you think about like 1 Thessalonians 2, and then it's Matthew, maybe whenever he's weeping over Jerusalem, and Jesus is weeping over Jerusalem, he calls himself, he likens himself to a mother hen.
Yeah.
A mother hen with her chicks.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And Paul likens himself to a loving mother who tenderly cares for her nursing child.
Yep.
That there is a tenderness, a nurturer that is distinctly feminine.
Yeah.
That is also so part of who God is.
Yeah.
He is the helper. He is the nurturer.
Yeah.
And that is how God has wired women to be.
All right, I'm getting in on it. Don't.
I got one more, but you go.
Don't run away, because I wanted to jump in on this. I think for me, the image, you've probably heard me talk before from Song of Songs 2-3 about the image of the man being an apple tree of fruit and shade. But in the verses right before it, I think the primary image of femininity that I draw from the Bible is Song of Songs 2:1. She says, "I am a rose of Sharon and a lily of the valleys." And the rose of Sharon was actually a desert cactus rose, right? And so what I see in there is that it's not just that she's this like delicate flower. It's like the rose of Sharon. Like when you're in the desert, you're dead. Like it's the life and death is water. And what the cactus does, it says, I can take it. I can take the heat. I can retain the water, and I can give you refreshment when you need it. And so I feel like there's a feminine strength that provides refreshment to me as a man, to me as a husband, that is really unique to a woman, And I can be with the bros and be encouraged and strengthened, but not like I can with my wife. I mean, there's a different life-giving force that she has. When my life feels like a desert, when my day is like a desert, she can bring that refreshment as a rose of Sharon, a lily of the valleys, and that is about beauty and fragrance, and without getting into the philosophy and the history of it, I mean, it's like we all know that beauty has a healing power. Like that's why people pay to go to museums. There's a healing, and people make art. Beauty has a healing power, and women bring a beauty, a fragrance to our lives, a feminine strength and refreshment. So when I see the rose of Sharon, lily of the valleys, to me, I see a woman who is strong, who is nourishing, nurturing, refreshing, beautiful, fragrant, and just brings delight to the soul. And this is something that women bring, and that brings with it not only renewal in life but healing. One of the historic.
Why do you say healing? Just curious. Because there's other words that come to my mind when you say beauty has a healing power. There's other words that I would think I would be more inclined to put there that kind of resonate with me more. So why do you say healing?
I say healing because life beats us down. Think about the when kind of the kid skins his knee, runs to mom crying. Okay, yeah, mom maybe provides a Band-Aid, but really what she provides is care, attention, attentiveness, and the healing she brings to that child, and that child runs away 30 seconds later, his knee is still the same. But something in his soul has been healed by her care for him. And you know, as adults, as a man, I still have that skin knee that I still bring to my wife, and she still brings that care, that compassion, that tenderness, that is healing. Not like, you know, life gives you these cuts, these hits, these bruises, these that the man is supposed to take, right? And then there's a womanly life-giving force that brings renewal. And to use the natural world as an image, historians, I'm not making this up, so historians have talked a lot about the male image of the sun is something that initiates, it provides heat, it provides light, and the earth, the female, receives that heat and light and turns it into life, right? Turns it into greenery and forests and vegetation and beauty and flora and fauna and all the things that and so and then in the winter it all dies off, but in the spring it's all renewed, right? There's a healing power even to the annual calendar of the earth, and I feel like that's what women bring to us men.
All right, beautiful. Yeah, so the healing, and then the first thing you were talking about with the flower.
Yeah.
Both these, I would just kind of, as you explain it, connect it under the umbrella of the helper and the tender, nurturing, caring, carer.
Which, by the way, I think really well reflect both sides of God, right? In terms of, I heard a woman say recently that Christ was a man he was a man with compassion, without compromise. With compassion, without compromise. And I think there's these two sides to it, to humanity that Christ brought and showed us, the tender side and the strength, and that that women are able to be a helper to us men in this way.
Yeah. So helper, nurturer, carer. Here's a third thing that it, like scripturally and practically, and we need to wrap up here. You got a Bible class that you need to teach in a second.
Yep.
But a third thing that has stood out to me so well that I don't know how to like really capture it with a label. So if you're listening, you have a label that you could put on this. This would really help me. But in Deuteronomy 17, God gives the rules for the king. And this is just one example of hundreds that you could get from the Bible of the power of the woman. And this is what he says. He says, the king shall not multiply wives for himself, or else his heart will turn away. Okay, don't multiply wives for yourself. There's a lot of reasons why not to do that. One of them is his heart will turn away. The capacity of a woman to steer the priorities of a man's heart is so obvious, especially if you've been in youth ministry. Holy cow. You watch you watch a guy and a girl, and they start feeling things, and you know they start to like each other. And then if this is the priorities of the girl and this is the priorities of the guy, here's what happens.
Yep.
The woman's capacity to steer, to influence a man's heart is so obvious scripturally. Just why God warns against multiplying wives here. And then just practically, you can see nothing steers the priority of a man's heart like the woman he loves. Mm-hmm. So yes, the woman is helper. Yes, the woman is the nurturer, and yes, the woman is, help me with a label here, but it's like the steerer, the influencer. I don't know what the label to put on, but what the reason I want to get at these is we're talking about the equality of the genders. We're talking about the distinction of the genders, and I just wanted to put some language behind some of the things that have been stirring in me about what is distinctly feminine and distinctly what parts of femininity are distinctly feminine and at the same time distinctly divine, and how beautiful that is, and how I want to be able to champion tenderness and care as good expressions of femininity that don't need to be suppressed. Where, gosh, I have so many things I want to say about this, but and kind of its application to the way I want to. Things I want to champion with my girls, but I just don't have time. So I want to finish our time by reading what I read at the end of the service. And the reason I want to do it is because it was my attempt to, from the really like the depths of my heart, to be able to champion equality and distinction and interdependence all in a short little, I don't know what you would call this.
Yeah.
A thing to our women and a thing to our men. And so let's listen to this as husbands and wives, as moms and dads, as single men, single women, and as part of many members of one body, masculine and feminine, distinct and equal, in a church where we are interdependent. All right. I'm going to start with the women, and I'll try to read it somewhat fast, but not too fast. Women, you are made in the image of God. You are wired by God to be like God in terms of your help and your nurturing care. Yes, just as God gave Eve as a helper to Adam and then called himself that helper, so you bring God's help to those who need strength. Your kids find great joy and comfort in your embrace and in your words of encouragement. So do your husbands. You are distinct. While men are usually stronger, you possess an inner strength that often comes out in crisis. Like Esther, who said, "If I perish, I perish," or the women who stayed by Jesus' side when the men hid, or the women who came to the tomb, you tend to find yourself in the place of need. There's a reason more women serve in church at higher rates than men. You are distinct. You tend to have bigger emotions. You, like Mary, who anointed Jesus with perfume, and the woman who washed Jesus' feet with her tears, and like Hannah, who prayed before the Lord so passionately she appeared to be drunk, you have a tenderness before the Lord that expresses itself in worship that Jesus called legendary. You're distinct. And your help, your care, your inner strength, your emotions, your tenderness, you reflect the God whose image you bear. You're distinct. Man, that pumps me up.
Yeah.
To the men, we are made in the image of God. We are wired by God to be like God in terms of providing and protecting and loving and leading. God made us bigger and stronger, that our strength would get leveraged to protect the vulnerable, to run in the direction of bullets or burning buildings. We are protectors. We are distinct. We are providers, yes, in terms of physical necessities, but also in terms of emotional stability. Our emotions tend to be more steady, and we can be stable bulwarks that our wives can crash against without us being moved. We are distinct. We are wired for purpose, for chasing something bigger than ourselves. Like Moses, Joshua, David, or the apostles, many of us have the desire to create and sustain movements that take ground, that make a difference. We're distinct. In our marriages, we represent Jesus in terms of sacrificial love, the one who gives preference, the one who humbles ourselves to the point of death, the one who dies that others might live. We are distinct. In our protection, our provision, our love, our leadership, we reflect the God whose image we bear. We are distinct. And when you put all this together, you get a better picture of God. When we see a God who is not idle in our need, who ran to us in our need and placed himself in the middle of it to rescue his children and glorify the Father, he carried the cross and maintained the inner strength to do what no man or woman could do, absorb the wrath of God as our righteousness and loving substitute. Only God could do that. He is distinct. He was crucified, buried, and rose again that he might give his righteousness and his spirit to those who call on him in faith, that his spirit in us might make us distinct more than just as men or as women, but supernaturally distinct as ones in whom God dwells, to help, to care, to love, to lead, to provide, and to protect to the glory of the Father. So knowing we are distinct in our gender and supernaturally distinct by his spirit, let's be who we are. You want to pray for us?
Good word. Yeah, let's pray. Father in heaven, we thank you for your word. We thank you for your guidance, your Holy Spirit. Thank you that even though we don't always understand everything, that you will continue to help us to walk in a path of righteousness. Thank you for things that we do understand and help us to hold fast to those and to walk in them by the power of your Spirit. For the praise of your glory, may we retain both the the equality, but also the distinction and delight to live in those things so that we will reflect our design and honor you and honor any celestial observers whom we will one day join in person. But until that day, Lord, may we be faithful to do it here by the power of your Spirit to the praise of your glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Let's go.
Let's do it.
Thanks for joining.
Vamos España.